Mist drifts over the grasslands as dawn stretches across the plains, and the world inhales before history begins to move. In the hush of early light, a shape rises from the earth itself, lean, alert, a young warrior listening to the breath of the land. This is the cradle of a kingdom not yet known to the world, but soon impossible to ignore. The air trembles with the low beat of distant feet. Not drums, footfalls, bare souls striking soil in a rhythm older than any empire. A formation of young men, moving as one body, one intention, one storm. They train in silence, their spears glinting like thin lines of lightning. No one commands them. They already know their places. They are shaping themselves into something new, something sharp, something the world's great powers never imagined could rise from the hills and valleys of the South. At the center of this transformation stands a figure whose name will roll across continents like thunder, Shaka. He moves with purpose, eyes fixed not on the ground before him, but on the vast horizon, as if he can already see the future unfolding. He is born into conflict, forged in exile, and shaped by a relentless insistence that the world can be remade by will alone. He changes the spear, not long and thrown from a distance, but short, stabbing, intimate. He changes the shield, not a loose hide, but a broad, disciplined wall of protection. He changes the very idea of battle, turning chaos into choreography. He teaches his warriors to run, to endure, to strike with precision. He burns weaknesses out of the army like impurities from iron. Under him, the age-old skirmish becomes a storm surge, and the world begins to notice. Across the plains, smoke from rival clans curls into the sky as the Zulu consolidate, absorb, transform. What began as a small chieftaincy becomes a force rolling outward, scattering tribes like leaves before a gale. The Amafila regiments form, the veterans whose scars gleam like silver threads. The Umkosi gatherings swell, thousands upon thousands answering Shaka's call. The Amabutho, the age-grade regiments, grow into the disciplined spine of a rising nation. Yet the story is not simply conquest. It is innovation. It is psychology. It is the art of war elevated to ritual. Shaka arranges his regiments like an animal, the chest to engage, the horns to encircle, the loins hidden in reserve. The horns of the bull formation unfolds across battlefields with terrifying beauty, an ancient instinct translated into battlefield geometry. Opponents face not a mob, but a single organism of disciplined force. The land trembles under the coordinated rush. Spears thrust in a deadly rhythm. Shields lock like a living fortress. And as the Zulu Kingdom expands, it reshapes not only its neighbors but the entire region. Refugees flee, alliances fracture, great migrations begin. The Mifakani, the crushing, ripples outward, scattering entire nations across southern Africa. Some flee north to the highlands, others push west into new territories. What begins as internal unification becomes a continental tremor. Still, within the kingdom, life throbs with vibrancy, order, and ceremony. Cattle move in slow, heavy lines beneath towering skies. Women craft shields that will shine white in moonlight. Messengers sprint in tireless relays, carrying news across an empire woven by footsteps. Warriors polish spear tips until they reflect the world in exacting detail. The kingdom breathes with rhythm, ritual, and the evolving force of its people. Then, from beyond the southern horizon, another presence enters the scene. Unfamiliar, pale, armed with weapons that thunder. Traders from across the sea, envoys carrying muskets and gunpowder. Imperial powers tasting the edges of a continent they do not understand. They arrive quietly at first, exchanging goods, observing, taking notes. They watch the Zulu rise, but fail to comprehend what they are witnessing. For they carry their own ambitions, their own maps, their own assumptions of superiority. But the Zulu Kingdom does not fit into their expectations. It stands tall, fluid, organized. A nation forged by discipline, loyalty, and the charisma of a leader who reshaped warfare through sheer intuition. Yet even Shaka cannot escape the tide of mortality. When rivals within his own family conspire, the great king falls not in battle, but by the hands of those closest to him. His death sends ripples through the regiments, the homesteads, the land itself. The moment is quiet, almost too quiet for the magnitude of what has occurred. And then, Transition. Leadership shifts. Dingane rises. A kingdom that defined itself through expansion now faces a different kind of challenge: diplomacy, balance, the encroaching shadow of global powers. European settlers, hunters, and adventurers push inland. They move with wagons, rifles, and claims of entitlement. Tensions simmer. Treaties are proposed, broken, twisted. Words become weapons long before muskets fire. Dingaan navigates a world where the enemy smiles, shakes hands, and conceals intentions beneath paper and ink. Then the fuse is lit. Misunderstandings turn to confrontations. Confrontations ignite into violence. Dingane orders the killing of a Boer delegation, an act that sends shockwaves through the colonial frontiers. Retaliation comes swiftly. Clashes erupt in bursts of smoke and shouting. At the Encombe River, warriors brave musket fire in waves, pressing forward against flaming volleys. The water turns dark with history's stain. The Zulus suffer a bitter defeat, yet their courage becomes legend. Leadership shifts again, and Mpande takes the throne, guiding the kingdom through a period of fragile stability. Trade routes reopen, diplomacy resumes. But the world is changing, and its powers are growing hungry. European empires carve Africa with compass and ink, dividing lands they have barely seen. Their red lines and blue borders creep ever closer to Zulu territory. And then comes the king who will face the empire head-on, Cetshwayo. He inherits a kingdom proud, disciplined, and strong, but now hemmed in by a British Empire fueled by industrial might and imperial certainty. Britain demands the dissolution of the Zulu military system. Disarm, disband, submit. Cetshwayo refuses. In the grasslands, the regiments rise once more. Shields of cowhide gleam beneath the sun. Young warriors chant the songs of their forefathers. Old veterans sharpen spears older than the empire they are about to confront. The air crackles with anticipation. The storm breaks at Isandlwana. A British encampment sprawls across the hillside, confident, unfortified, unaware of the force preparing to descend upon it. Hidden in the folds of the land, 20,000 Zulu warriors wait in silence. Breath held, fingers tense on spear shafts. The horns of the bull begin to unfold. And then, eruption. War cries tear through the air. The ground shakes under the charge. Red coats scramble as waves of disciplined warriors crash into their lines. Rifles fire, bayonets flash, but the sheer momentum overwhelms them. It is a battle fought at terrifying closeness. Breath against breath, shield against barrel, the dust thick with chaos. When the smoke clears, Isandlwana becomes one of the greatest military defeats the British Empire ever suffers on African soil. A victory so shocking, it reverberates across the world. But triumph carries a shadow. The empire regroups, furious and determined. Columns march with overwhelming firepower. Gatling guns, artillery, endless supplies. The Zulu meet them again and again, fighting with unbroken resolve. At Rorke's Drift, a handful of British soldiers hold a tiny outpost, and the battle becomes a symbol fiercely claimed by the empire. But in truth, the war is decided not by courage, but by resources, by industry, by machinery, by a world shifting into modern violence. The final clash erupts at Ulundi. A vast square of British soldiers stands under the blazing sun, rifles loaded, artillery ready. The Zulu regiments advance in waves of bravery unmatched in the empire's memory. They charge knowing what awaits. They run into the storm because duty demands it, because their ancestors demand it, because the kingdom they love demands it. The air fills with fire, smoke, and the haunting echo of war cries swallowed by gunfire. When the dust settles, the Zulu Kingdom is broken, but not erased. Cetshwayo is captured, exiled, returned, and caught in the fraying threads of a land divided by foreign rule. Generals, chiefs, and princes struggle to hold together what imperial lines and internal fractures strain to tear apart. The kingdom shifts from power to memory, from sovereignty to legacy. But its influence does not fade. Because history remembers courage. History remembers innovation. History remembers people who stand when the world expects them to kneel. Today, the echoes of that kingdom linger in the soil, in the songs, in the rituals passed hand to hand through generations. Warriors who once ran barefoot across the plains now run through the bloodstream of a nation. Their discipline, their identity, their pride, these endure. And as the sun sets over the landscapes they once defended, the wind carries a whisper through the tall grass. A whisper of a kingdom that defied empires, reshaped a continent, and carved its story into the bones of time. The Zulu Kingdom does not simply rise and fall. It rises, transforms, and continues, living in the memory of the land and in the hearts of all who remember what courage sounds like when spoken through a spear, a shield, and a people who refuse to disappear.